All right. Hello, everyone. This is Omer with iVision. Hope you are all doing well. I appreciate you taking the time to hop on this important webinar today. We're going to be talking about some upcoming industry changes and the impact that will have on your business and your clients' messaging. And so this is hopefully will be a very informative call as this industry continues to evolve. So as always, we've muted all the participants. So if you have any questions, comments, please use the chat feature. And this call also is being recorded so that we can post it in the reseller portal and make it available to those that were unable to attend. Before we get started, I just want to give a shout out to Todd Trinan. I'm not sure if he's on the call or not, but Todd's nephew is on the Dodgers and signed with them this year and is pitching in the World Series. So congrats on that huge achievement there. So got to represent for the home team, and now we can go ahead and move forward with this discussion. So we will be covering a few topics on today's call. We're going to talk about shared short codes and what does the future hold for these codes. We're going to talk about A2P 10 DLCs and will this option work for your users. Then we'll talk about text-enabled toll-free numbers, which we personally recommend. And we'll go through some brief code of conduct updates with regards to AT&T and T-Mobile. And then we'll talk about timeline and process. What are your next steps? As well as talking about some system updates and new features added. We'll be giving you a sneak peek on the waitlist feature and also the new messaging dashboard that has now been fully designed. So we're excited to show that off to you guys here. So with all that said, let's talk about shared short codes. So as you know, most of you operate on one of our shared short codes, and these have never actually been officially supported by the carriers. They were always kind of this gray area where most of the traffic that you see in the marketplace is shared short code traffic, but officially they've never been supported by the carriers. And T-Mobile has hinted that a tentative date of March 2021 has been set for discontinuing support for shared short codes. Obviously, every carrier is kind of at their own timeline for this, but T-Mobile has indicated this tentative date. But they've also made a note and mentioned the fact that there will not be any termination of shared short codes until there's a commercial availability of 10 DLC A2P messaging. So we even though the tentative date has been set for March 2021, it could be 6 months or even a year after that until all the carriers get on board. We just don't know the complete timeline just yet. And like I said, the majority of iVision traffic currently is on some form of shared short code. And when I mean some form, some of you have a dedicated code as a reseller, a licensee, and as such, it's still being shared across all of your users. So it's still technically considered a shared short code, even though it is dedicated for you. And so there have been some claims about exemptions to be made on a case-by-case basis, and this involves codes that are specific to one industry or one vertical, perhaps, or codes that are part of a platform where there's no end user logging in to manage the messaging, meaning the messaging is being managed by a mobile marketing expert such as yourself. So we're going to obviously push to get an exemption for our codes, but from my understanding, it's going to be very few and far between and very, very limited. And so I'm not quite sure how that exemption process will take place, but certainly we'll be pushing for that. So with regards to one of the questions here, will it affect licensees with a dedicated short code? It really depends on how that dedicated short code is being used. If you are using it for 100 different clients, and those clients across a variety of different industries, then that technically is still a shared code, even though it's dedicated to you. So we'll know more about exemptions as we get closer to these deadlines. So let's talk a little bit about 10 DLCs and will this option work for you? And so it's very important to make a distinction between A2P and P2P. And for those that don't know, A2P stands for application to person, meaning high volume, and P2P stands for person to person, meaning low volume, one-on-one messaging. So if we look at the current state of A2P 10DLC messaging, you'll notice that Verizon went live. They went live earlier this year, and T-Mobile and AT&T are currently in what's called the soft launch phase, and then Sprint is scheduled to go live here within the coming weeks. And T-Mobile and Sprint have indicated that their pilot program for A2P launch is going to be through March of 2021. So that's where that date came about from. So again, this is A2P 10DLC, which is different from the current P2P 10DLC solutions. And as you know, if you're sending on a 10-digit localized number, it's very, very low volume currently. So the A2P 10DLC messaging is going to be different because it's going to support higher volume. And as such, you're going to have, like I said, more throughput capabilities, and that is translated as text per second, TPS, as well as a new vetting process for 10-digit numbers, which will translate to no spam filtering. So right now, as you know, a lot of the messages that go through, all the messages that go through the 10DLC and the toll-free network are subject to spam filtering on the carrier level, and the new vetting process will eliminate that. So that is currently the current state of A2P 10DLC messaging in the United States. Now, this vetting process is a little bit fragmented, meaning, you know, every carrier really has their own policy. So the vetting process for new 10DLCs is really meant to ensure the long-term protection of the messaging ecosystem. So the carriers do not want mobile to become the next email, right? They want to really ensure the viability of the ecosystem. They want clarity on who's sending messages, and this is part of the vetting process. And this is going to, again, eliminate the need for the spam filtering on messages because the vetting process is going to happen in advance. So unfortunately, the vetting process for new numbers differs by carrier, and this is where it gets a little nuanced. So number one, Verizon, there's no vetting. The throughput is really just limited by the network volume, so much like current gateway standards now, where we're essentially limited by how many messages we can send. AT&T, on the other hand, is going to have a registration process where they're going to capture the brand and the campaign information. So when you go to register a new account, that information is going to be passed through to AT&T or to the upstream aggregator as part of the vetting process, and that will in turn establish a score, a vetting score, which will determine the class of your messaging, and as a result, the text per second and any surcharges. So based on AT&T's initial guidance on 10DLC messaging, they will establish a class for the type of messaging that you're going to be conducting, whether it's marketing, non-marketing, transactional, non-transactional, and that class will determine not only your text per second, but also any carrier surcharges that are applicable. And those carrier surcharges will vary depending on the class. So a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, really potential issues here with this, right? I mean, how do you determine your cost when your cost fluctuates depending on what type of campaigns are running? So a lot of unknown that are still being worked out. And then T-Mobile and Sprint essentially are going to have a daily messaging quota assigned for each brand. So if a brand or a business is using multiple toll-free numbers or multiple 10DLCs, that messaging quota will be for the brand as a whole, not per number. So you can see here that, there's really a lot of different stuff going on for each carrier. So, our summary and the opinion of new A2P 10DLC is essentially, number one, that this new gateway channel is going to be experiencing growing pains in the first few years. We know that it's an entirely new and different messaging gateway that the carriers are establishing, and as such, it's going to go through some of these hurdles and these growing pains as more and more traffic comes online. Also, we have this very fragmented cross-carrier vetting process, which differs by carrier, and there's been this really inconsistent carrier launch strategy and timeline. So every carrier is kind of on their own pace for implementing 10DLC, And that's the problem that we've had up until now, is that, the carriers are really going down different directions. So right now where we stand is that the carriers are still working on the contracts with the aggregators. So they've sent the contracts to the aggregators, stipulating all the guidelines for new 10 DLC messaging and the pricing structure and such. And they've asked the aggregators to not only obviously execute these contracts, but also provide more information on the short codes that are currently set up through their networks to determine which ones are shared, which ones are dedicated. And then regarding here, a question that came in is iVision the brand or the reseller of each of our merchants? So each of your merchants will be the brand, okay? So the 10 DLC is meant to be brand or business specific, okay? So when you register a 10-digit number, it is going to be for one merchant, one business, okay? Not multiple businesses. One brand, one number. All right, moving on to text-enabled toll-free numbers. So this is the recommended approach. Currently, we have 200 plus text-enabled toll-free numbers that are active on the platform. And these toll-free numbers are generating about 4 million messages sent per month. So we're doing a significant amount of traffic already to date on these numbers. In fact, we really started onboarding clients with toll-free numbers as of March of this year. And around June is when we started to see some real traction with the toll-free numbers as we were kind of assessing the viability of the messaging. And so I think we've worked out a lot of the kinks. We've understood what some of the pitfalls are. Most certainly we can provide guidance and education to the licensees as it relates to toll-free numbers. But we have active traffic and active codes. So we've already kind of gone through the initial uncertainty and testing, and now we feel very comfortable that the text-enabled toll-free numbers is really the right path for you and for your users. And the reason is that currently there is no vetting process in place. Now, of course, that's always subject to change in the future. So part of the discussion is, once this vetting process gets put into place, applying the vetting process to toll-free numbers as well. But currently, there is no vetting process. The nice thing about toll-free numbers is that the throughput capabilities are similar to short codes, so you don't have to worry about blocks or anything like that due to volume. We have clients that are doing hundreds of thousands of messages a month on toll-free numbers without any issues. Something that's different about toll-free numbers is that the stop and unstop process is actually handled upstream. So as you know, our system typically handles the stop opt-out process. When somebody texts in a stop command, our system will then opt that person out and send them a confirmation message. With toll-free numbers, that's handled outside of our system. So if somebody texts stop, they get a carrier-generated message that essentially confirms that they've opted out, and then it provides them instructions to unopt out or opt back in by texting in unstop, and all that's handled outside of our system upstream. So it's just a little, different. And again, text-enabled toll-free numbers are currently subject to spam filtering on the carrier networks. If they do implement a vetting process, I would imagine that spam filtering will go away. So this includes prohibited content and language, and it also includes public short URLs. Bit.ly's tiny URL, and you'll notice that I've listed Swirl It there. This is something that came up again this morning with the support request, but Swirl It, unfortunately, due to some licensees that were doing some prohibited content previously on toll-free numbers, managed to get Swirl It red flags. So we've been making an active push to offer our licensees the ability to private label your own coupon and short URL. We definitely encourage you to do that. It's going to allow for higher deliverability, and I can already tell you that if you're going to switch to a toll-free number or a 10 DLC and you're going to use Swirl It, you will have issues with deliverability because this URL has already been kind of red flagged. So it's just a matter of setting each reseller up with their own private label URL. It's kind of an enhanced private labeling feature that we're offering now. We definitely encourage you to take advantage of it. So a question here regarding other opt-out language. So other opt-out language, I think as far as I understand it, is going to be the standard stop commands. And the standard stop commands are stop, end, quit, unsubscribe, cancel, and remove. Those are the standard stop commands. Anything outside of those, like, please take me off your list, I moved out of town, I don't want to get your messages anymore, those are not going to be caught upstream. Those are going to be managed by you internally or by the client inside the system. So I'm not sure it's going to be as robust as our stop capabilities. All right, moving on. AT&T T-Mobile updated code of conduct. So a few changes with regards to code of conduct. Let's look at AT&T first. So AT&T has indicated that they would like to see opt-out language in all text messages going out, meaning every message that goes out should include reply stop to cancel. I know many of you have adjusted your messages to remove the footer. We have indicated that we don't recommend doing that. We have indicated that if you are going to remove the footer, that you want to manually insert the footer at least once a month into your messaging so that the consumer knows how to opt out. In this case, AT&T has indicated that they would like to see that opt-out language in all messages. Okay, now this is a best practice code of conduct update. It's not a law. It's not an FCC rule. It is a best practice. And it could have potential repercussions. So they have hinted that obviously they don't want any use of public URL shorteners. And they've also indicated that they may block messages on codes sending them for violation of these guidelines. Okay, so if you violate these guidelines, they do have the ability to block your messages, and they've established that they can block it across short codes or 10 DLCs or toll-free numbers. So it's important to note that if you are currently removing your footer from the message, you might want to rethink this strategy and include it more frequently in your messages. I'm not sure what type of oversight they are going to implement, what type of automated mechanism they're going to implement to catch and block messages. We don't know. All we know is what they've indicated here. Let's see here, just looking at some of these messages here. What about other opt-out language? Okay, we covered that. Can you still apply the other logic other than stop, unstop? So our system, if the opt-out command doesn't get caught upstream, then our system will look for additional stop commands that our system supports. And then if you want to type reply end to stop in your message, that satisfies AT&T's condition here of including opt-out language in my eyes. Okay. And then T-Mobile. So campaigns can be suspended if opt-out rates exceed 4% in a 24-hour period. We don't really see opt-outs climbing higher than 4%. I think 1 to 3% is typical for a text blast. So 4% in a 24-hour period is kind of high. I don't think people are really crossing that threshold. Here's another thing that T-Mobile has indicated. Number one, when transitioning from a short code to a new 10 DLC or toll-free number, they want you, and this is a best practice that we talk about regularly, to send a final message that the programming is moving to a new code. And then they want you to send an invite from the new code to confirm the opt-in, but then they've also stated that they want to cease messages if no affirmative response. And this is a little odd for a carrier to set this as a code of conduct. They are essentially saying here that, hey, if you're transitioning from a short code to a toll-free number or to a 10 DLC, they want you to re-opt in your entire database, which is kind of circa 2013 when the TCPA first came out, required people to re-opt in their entire database. So just to clarify again, this is not an FCC law. It is not a TCPA law. It is a T-Mobile best practice. To what extent can they enforce this best practice? I'm not sure. But assuming this is not a law and there's not going to be any class action concern or liability for switching people from a short code to a toll-free number or 10 DLC. I'm not sure to what extent you're going to want to re-opt in the entire client's database, okay? And I'm just going to leave everybody to make their own informed decision there, okay? But just again to note that this is not a law. This is strictly a T-Mobile Code of Conduct update. Question regarding private label URL shorteners, whether they're considered public. The public URL shorteners are strictly referring to the ones that are generally for public use, like the bit.lys and the tiny URLs. They're not referring to a private label URL that's used by you and your customers and only you and your customers. You're not making that publicly available across the web for other public-facing companies or entities to use. So your private label URL will be exempt from that list of public URL shorteners. All right, so timeline and process. Here are your next steps. So number one, let's get you to register your own private label coupon and short URL. Some of you have done this already, but the majority of you have not. This can be the same. So the coupon URL and the short URL can technically be the same link. You do not have to register two different links. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. And then as far as the instructions, you want to make sure that they are 8 or less total characters, and this includes the dot, okay, includes the period. You then want to export your zone file for Windows, okay, and you can do this very easily through GoDaddy. And once you've emailed that to us, you want to then go ahead and proceed to change the name servers to these name servers right here. And again, this will be made available to you in the reseller portal, so you can refer back to it. And this will allow us to private label the coupon in the short URL for you. We'll set up the SSL certificate and all that good stuff. The next step is, if you haven't already done so, register a text-enabled toll-free number for testing purposes. Go ahead and send the request. You do that in the reseller portal. You go to the little tab here that says request form for a 10-digit long code or toll-free number, and you submit that request, and we can then plug it into your account, and then you can start doing testing, which we recommend doing as soon as you can if you don't already have a toll-free number. Once you've done that, go ahead and switch one of your active users to the new code and make that transition for them. Preferably somebody that has active volume that's doing traffic. Maybe it doesn't have to be your number one client that's doing all your volume, but somebody may be kind of in the middle. And we are going to be developing a self-service tool in the coming months. So right now it is a very manual process, right? You submit the request, we have to then go and register the number, we have to plug it into your account, and then we'll let you know when it's ready. So over the next few months here, hopefully by the end of the year, we're going to have a fully self-service tool, so when that user is logged in, they will be prompted, or you will be prompted if you're logged into their account, to switch through the system. And the self-service tool will automatically register the requested number. It will then apply the code to the user's account, and it will update the user's campaigns with the new code. So it'll be very seamless, and we'll do the entire process as kind of a self-service kind of step-by-step process there. So a couple questions here regarding toll-free numbers. So what are the character limitations? Currently, they're the same, 160 for SMS, 500 for MMS. We do have plans to increase that. So we are working on increasing those character limits. It is a very involved and comprehensive task to do so. So it's not something that can be done easily, and that's why it hasn't been done yet, is because it basically essentially everywhere there's a message field in the system and in the database, and all the engines that process everything in between, all that needs to be updated with new character limits. So it's a little bit of a lengthy process to get that done, but certainly on our list. As far as vanity codes, vanity toll-free numbers, you can specify the area code, but not the actual number. You can do, you can request an 888 or an 866 or an 833 or an 822 or an 844, but that's really the extent of the customization that you get. The cost is $2.50 per month on the toll-free numbers or the long codes. And there's a question here, will we need this toll-free to use for autoresponders for the master account? I'm not sure what that means exactly, but the toll-free number will essentially replace the short code. So if you're using a short code, that will switch a toll-free number. And then the toll-free number is you know, it's essentially owned by you, meaning if you wanted to transfer it, I guess you could. I mean, we register it through our master iVision account, but we don't necessarily own the number. I think it's owned by the upstream aggregator with whom it's registered. So, and just to clarify that toll-free number is not for voice, it's just for messaging. If a brand or a client has an existing toll-free number that they're using for voice, we can text enable that number, okay, which is important to note. So definitely encourage that. It allows them to keep that consistency of maintaining their existing number. As far as documentation on setting up the private label short URL, really it's what we've sent previously to anybody that has received or has inquired about private labeling the URL. We can certainly follow up with that information, but it is on the previous slide. So when we make the slideshow available, you can see it there. And a question here about text enabling a local number. Yes, so if a client has an existing business line, they want to text enable that line and it's local, we can certainly do that. Again, it's going to be a P2P line, so they're not going to have the volume to do volume messaging, you know, text blasts or anything like that. It's strictly one-on-one, so just make it very clear to the client that if they want to text enable their local number, it's strictly for one-on-one messaging. All right. There are a question here about limitations on porting a number for SMS. There are some carriers that do not allow a number to be ported out. So we make the request, and it either gets approved or not. And if it doesn't get approved, we'll be notified essentially that it did not port over, and then we can, you know, we have backup obviously to provision a new number. But there really isn't a size database for the upper limit for P2P text blasts. It's the carriers do not want to see multiple instances of the same message sent in a short period of time, and they want to see an equal ratio of inbound to outbound messages. So those are the things that they look for. System updates and new features added. So a few things here to cover. So these are completed and live. As you know, we've switched all the coupon and short URLs. They're now secure. So this was done, I think, a couple months back. It was part of the toll-free and 10 DLC messaging, is that, you know, the carriers wanted to see these links secure in order to bypass the spam filters. So we took the steps to do that. On the message blast schedule, you'll now see the target list name. So if you are sending to a target list, you'll see that the name now appears, which just gives you a little bit more insight, so you can clearly see who the message is going to. But when we added that, of course, we had somebody say, hey, I don't want my users to see the target list name. So as a result, we've also added a user restriction to hide this from view. If you have multiple people logging into the account and you want them to have limited permissions, then you can now hide the target list name from view for those that you don't want to have access to that. And then we also launched this earlier this week. It's an advanced filter on the blast schedule, and it allows you to search or filter by date range, recipients, type, and status. And so recipients, you target anybody or search for anybody that's a target list or all contacts. Type would be a blast or a trigger message, and then status would be the actual status of the message. Did it get delivered? Is it failed? Is it scheduled? Things like that. So for those of you that are using triggers and blasts and your blast schedule has become cluttered with all this data, you can now use the advanced filter to you know, just kind of see more efficiently into the blast schedule. The text reminder system, we added the ability to add calendar appointment types. So if your clients are using the reminder system and they want to be able to differentiate an appointment by the type of appointment that it is, you can now add appointment types to your calendar appointments. And finally here, I can't get this thing to hide. We've managed to finally switch over to the new data center. All of our servers, they've been relocated. This has been a 2-year process in the making, so I'm very happy to say that it's complete, and everything is in the new server center. It's closer to us from a proximity perspective, so if there is an issue, we can get there we can get there much faster, number one. And number two, it's not going to be plagued with the same power issues and DDoS attacks that were previously plaguing the other data centers. So much of the outages that we've experienced over the last 5-6 years have been a result of DDoS attacks and power outages at this data center. And moving a data center is probably the most complicated task of all when you have a live active system. So not only was there a significant financial investment to purchase a robust set of servers to replace the existing facility, but then all the engines, all the data, everything that goes with our system had to be moved seamlessly to not impact any activity. And so while there were a few hiccups along the way, I can tell you that that process has now been completed. So we're really excited about that, and you should see a tremendous improvement in stability moving forward and just responsiveness of the system. All right, pending completion. We are still working on a master reseller inbox. I know many of you have asked for a reseller inbox. It is still pending. We've made good progress with it. We have a couple different directions we want to take it in terms of how we're building it out, but that is still being worked on. And also a message inbox filter. So many of you have asked for the ability to filter out certain messages from the inbox, like opt-ins and stop requests and things like that, and really just to have kind of random messages pop in there. So that is something that we are going to be working on. Or I should say are working on. The touchless self-service kiosk check-in is still in the works. And like I said, that server data center move really, unfortunately, hamstrung us with resources over the last 6 months. And so we unfortunately haven't been able to work across some of these projects as fast and make as much progress as we had hoped to make in the last few months. But now that that server move is behind us, then we are, kind of full steam ahead on these projects here. So the touchless self-service kiosk check-in is actively being worked on, as is the wait list for the check-in manager, which I'm gonna show you a sneak peek of here in just a little bit. As is the TRS redesign, which has been completed, the redesign part. And so now the programming of the new interface is going to get underway after we complete some of these other tasks. And so we're probably looking at, I would say, Q2, Q3, maybe even Q4 of next year to be done with the redesign, but I'll show you what that's looking like here in just a little bit. I think it's important to talk about the kiosk ecosystem so that you can visually see how the technology is laid out and how all the pieces work together. Because as you start to get into the wait list and the check-in manager and you start to utilize these tools in tandem, it's really important to kind of visually see what's happening behind the scenes. So we have essentially 3 modules. We have a kiosk, which is designed to be customer-facing. We have the check-in manager, which is meant to be back office or employee-facing. And then we have the wait list, which can really be both. It can be administered by the employee, or it can be accessed by the consumer. And so, and then on the kiosk, you have both the ability to join on the kiosk or the contactless check-in. So just to give you a quick glimpse into how this technology is laid out, you have these 3 modules, and they all kind of work together, right? If you check in on the check-in manager, or if an employee types in your number on the check-in manager, that's performing a kiosk check-in. It's really the same thing. So this data kind of syncs back and forth. And when you are checking in on the check-in manager, you also have the ability to auto-add somebody to the wait list. So you have a potential sync this way. Now, Do you want to allow somebody to sync from the wait list over to the kiosk and perform a check-in? We don't really know until we start to really roll this out and see how different users are using this technology. So I think it's really important to note that this is going to work differently depending on different use cases. And so we're going to have to just, once we launch this waitlist feature, do, really thorough testing in terms of what you're trying to achieve. And in some cases, you're going to want to set up a different kiosk and waitlist separate from the existing kiosk that somebody might be using to earn loyalty points and rewards if you're going to use the waitlist, because you might not want them to conflict with one another. So just taking a kind of a step back here, the waitlist is designed so that a consumer can enter automatically. They can get themselves onto the waitlist by either scanning a QR code or texting in a keyword that responds with a link. And when they click on that link, they go to a form where they can enter in their information and get onto the waitlist. And from the waitlist, they can then be communicated with. The contactless check-in is going to work much of the same way. They're going to go to the kiosk, and they're going to have the option, obviously, of touching the kiosk with their finger, but then they're going to have a contactless option that involves scanning a QR code. This is going to be a smart QR code that's going to refresh regularly to prevent misuse and fraud. And when somebody scans that QR code, it's going to then open up a text message with a hash code, an encrypted code. And when they hit send, it's going to send it into the system, which is then going to perform a security check. And that security check is going to be looking for the data in that QR code to determine where that person is that QR code active, and all the different security parameters that we're going to embed in this data code. And then only if it approves the security check, it will then go to basically a secure version of this check-in manager form. So we're not going to recreate the wheel. We're going to take this existing check-in manager opt-in form that exists currently as a back of house, but we're going to put a security layer around it. And if somebody scans a QR code and passes the security check, they're basically going to get to the same KCM form that the employee uses, but they're going to be typing in the information on their own to complete the check-in process. So that is how the touchless check-in is designed to work. Okay, a couple questions here. Will the iVision short URL platform provide analytics such as number of clicks and date and time? This is a useful Bitly feature. So I'm not sure how more extensive we're gonna build out analytics for short URLs. To be honest, the short URL is just a convenience feature of our system. We show you clicks on text blasts when you send out a link, a coupon link, things like that. But I'm not sure how comprehensive the analytics will be behind that. Are we working on the ability for any reply to a text sent to the waitlist to show from the waitlist within the view? Yes. So there will be an indication that a message has been sent to the consumer. There will also be a notice that a message may have been received from the consumer, and you will be able to click and see that conversation history from within the waitlist, which I'll show you here in just a second. And the security checking is also going to be a location check of some sort. So I don't know the specific details of what that security code is going to embed when somebody scans it, but there will be a few different pieces there that will have to get verified. And lastly here, can a patron check to see where they are on the waitlist independently from having to ask staff? And the answer is yes. We're going to have a link that you can click on from a message that will allow you to check your status, and I'll show you that here in just 1 second. So not thank you for your time just yet. We're going to switch gears here. I'm going to show you a few things. I'm going to show you the waitlist first and what the waitlist looks like on the back end here. 1 second to bring it up. All really great questions, by the way, from everybody here. All right, so the check-in manager settings are going to evolve a little bit from what they are currently. you're going to have a tab system. So you're going to have the check-in manager tab where you have your link to the check-in manager, as well as setting your log off, your PIN code, your employee tracking. This is stuff that already exists here. Your live stream, your auto lock kiosk. All this already exists in the waitlist in the check-in manager settings. But you're going to have a waitlist tab, and this waitlist tab will allow you to turn it on or off. It also allows you to give it a label. If you want to call it a queue, call it a queue. If you want to call it a waitlist, call it a waitlist. So I guess this is going to be really dependent on how the customer, how the business is using the waitlist functionality. It'll give you your self-entry link. So this is the link that's used. You can put that into a text message, and somebody can text in a keyword and get a message back to add themselves to the waitlist. And then you also have the QR code. And this QR code here, if you need a larger version of this QR code, you can just click here. You can type in your pixel value here, and then you'll get a downloadable QR code that you can then put on marketing and print collateral. You can even put it on a big sign on the door that says scan this to hop in line. There's a welcome text message. The welcome text message will be sent when is optional, obviously, but allows you to be sent when somebody joins the waitlist. And this can indicate what position they are in line as well. So there are merge fields here. The language isn't on this just yet, but the merge fields will allow you to display a person's order in line. And then the status link will be a merge field as well that will link to a status page, which I'll show you. Managing the staff is going to be the same as it is now. Right now, it's kind of under the check-in manager here at the bottom, but we've moved it to its own tab. So employees, you can manage different employees' PIN numbers here. And then the data sync is where it gets a little hairy. And this is because this is where you manage the syncing of the data across these different modules. So when and that's let's see, where's my presentation here? Somehow I lost my presentation. Here we go. So on this screen here, so when somebody checks in on the kiosk or on the KCM or on the wait list, how does that data then transfer? Where did I go? I lost my pop-up here. Sorry, just trying to make sense of all my tabs here. Where does that data get synced to? So when somebody checks on the kiosk, do we want to sync it to the wait list? When they check in on the check-in manager, do we want to sync it to the wait list? Do we want to sync it to the kiosk? Some of these things you might want to keep off. Like if somebody enters on the wait list, you don't necessarily want to sync that to the kiosk. You don't want somebody checking themselves in and giving themselves loyalty points. So this will probably be off by default. So you're going to be able to come in here and designate some of these sync settings. And then when you launch the wait list, that'll bring you into the check-in manager, and the wait list allows you to, if you have the auto check-in on, when you check somebody in, it'll then add them to the wait list automatically. And so from here you can see them on the wait list. It shows you how long they've been on the wait list. If I add a new check-in here, put in Derek. And now you have 2 people on the wait list. And if I wanted to send this person a message saying, hey, your table is ready, or if I wanted to type in a custom message, I can do so here. But if I send a message, that will indicate that a message has been sent. You'll see that stamped here that a text was sent, less than a minute ago. And the next step is kind of building in some of that reply functionality. You can go to the contact details page. This page is kind of been adjusted a little bit. We now show the rewards. So if a person has any rewards, they're going to be shown right here. You can actually redeem it right here. And you can also manage them on or off the wait list, which is really easy to do. And I mentioned earlier the line status. So a person will be able to click on a link in the message, and that will take them to a page that looks like this, which on a mobile device is going to look a little bit more like this. And they're going to be able to see, obviously, who they are, the number of guests in their party, the time on the wait list, their position on the wait list, their current status, and they're going to be able to update their status. I'm here, I left, I'm on my way, I'm running late. So these are going to be customizable as well. These are just kind of the standard status labels that we've provided, but you're going to have the ability to customize these. And so this allows the consumer to basically check their status on their own and also identify if they've left or they're here or they're running late or whatever the case may be. And this will be indicated on the wait list. So these labels that you see here, the I'm here, I left, will be showing here on the wait list as a little label, little tag. So it's not necessarily a response, it's going to be just a tag that shows up on the wait list. Now, we're trying to knock out all the remaining items on this wait list so we can get it launched. And we've been hoping to do that here over the last few weeks. It's just every time we get ready to launch, we discover something else. And so it's really important for us, obviously, as a provider. We don't want to launch something and then unlaunch it, right? We have to be really careful that we've really done our due diligence and gone through all the different, components of this piece, all the different scenarios, so that when we launch it, we are confident that it's going to work as intended. So really, again, here, just appreciate everybody's patience as we not only try to put all the pieces in place that we want to launch this with, like the line status and the welcome message and the virtual take a number, essentially, but make sure that all the bugs are worked out. So again, when somebody indicates their response, or I should say their status, it's not going to send a reply anywhere. It's just going to show it as a tag on the wait list. So down here, you're going to have a tag that says, I'm here, or I left. And if this person left, then you can just mark them as done and get them off the wait list because they've indicated that they've left. So that's how the wait list is designed to work. And so, like I said, a few additional things we want to add here, like the ability to show the conversation history if there's an incoming message, the ability to change the order in which the wait list people are displayed, by ascending date in, so first in, first out, or last in, the order in which they're displayed here. And so those are kind of the remaining pending things before we are ready to launch this wait list for everybody to use. Now, I will tell you that we have a few clients that are using this in just beta version, meaning it's not launched, but it can be available for you. So if you're interested in accessing this tool and playing around with it and just kind of doing some kicking of the tires, essentially here over the next week or so before we actually launch it, just let us know, and then we can get it activated for you so you can do some preliminary testing. The other thing I wanted to show you guys was the new messaging dashboard that we have finished designing. So I've shown you this dashboard in different stages. I think I showed the mobile version of it on a previous webinar, but now we have the full desktop and tablet version UI laid out. This is all not programmed. So everything you see here is really just design. It has not been programmed yet, but I wanted to give you a glimpse as to where we're going with this. So this is obviously going to be kind of the newest version of the text reminder system, but more than that, it's going to give you the ability to send out a text blast. It's going to give you the ability to do SMS or MMS. It's going to show you conversation history and going to give you the ability from here to, add a person onto a calendar and just, really kind of tie all the pieces together. So this is going to allow you to showcase any promotions that you have. So this will give the reseller the ability to kind of, put some graphics here if you want to highlight something. But it has templates for your messages. It has the calendar here as well, where you can click on an event or click on a task or see more details on something on the calendar. So this is obviously a much more robust version of the text reminder system. It's responsive design. It's going to incorporate some of the elements of the platform that are not currently in the text reminder system. And we're really excited to get this thing built out, fully programmed, and launched. As you can see, it's going to be a massive undertaking to do so, but we've already designed it. So now it's just a matter of plugging everything in and getting it to program. The way we look at this is that eventually there's a good possibility that is going to replace the existing dashboard, at least from the business logging in and managing it. So, right now, do we want to give the client access to log into this dashboard? Hi, everyone. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened there with my line, but it did get cut off, so I apologize. All right, so where was I going? What I was saying with this is that, this dashboard will hopefully replace the existing dashboard from a business user perspective. So we've tried to design this to just be a little bit more streamlined. Now, you're not going to be able to customize a kiosk from in here or customize coupons from in here, but from a usability perspective, I think for the business owner, it'll be a little bit more streamlined and simple for them to use in terms of navigating their needs. And then obviously we'll give you access to doing all the customizations and stuff behind the scenes. All right, let's see here. Just reviewing some of the questions here. What if they respond with something other than for? Okay, so again, the check-in manager here, the status is not a response. It's a button that they click, and that button is customizable to a certain degree for you as a reseller. So if you wanted to call that button instead of I left, you want to call it something else, you're going to have the ability of changing that label. And then when they click that button, that label is going to show up as a tag on the wait list. So it's not a response, and it's not a reply, okay? Let's see here. What is the estimated timeline for new messaging dashboard to be completed and live? Okay, so I did kind of mention that. So we're gonna first be building a self-service portal for transitioning to the 10-digit numbers or toll-free numbers before we start building out this dashboard. I imagine this is going to be a 6-month to a year project, assuming that there's no major fires and other hurdles that come up, and we can just kind of stay focused on this. I think it'll be a 6 months to 9 months, 10 months, potentially. I'm not an engineer, but that's my rough guesstimate. So obviously, as we progress into the coming months and we do additional webinars, I will provide updates on where we're at. But we're really excited with how the design came out. We solicited a design team to work with us on this design, and so they've been able to really kind of hone in on the user experience, the UX and the UI design that we personally are not experts on, and that's why we solicited the help of a third party to design it for us. The touchless check-in will be coming way before the messaging dashboard is complete. The touchless check-in will hopefully be ready in the coming weeks. So the touchless check-in and the wait list are kind of being worked on in tandem, and we hope to launch them around the same time. And so that will give you much more flexibility in terms of navigating your clients' concerns and needs for a touchless check-in system if they don't already want to use the check-in manager. Now, the waitlist dashboard check-in manager, that can be operated from anywhere. So it can be operated from a tablet. It could be managed on a smartphone. It could be managed on a POS system or an Android-based, a Windows or Android-based POS system. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of where you want that check-in manager or waitlist to be available, essentially where you want it to live. A great question came in here lastly here regarding keyword availability, and something I didn't mention on this webinar, but I mentioned on previous webinars. I like that the industry is shifting towards 10-digit dedicated numbers for a variety of reasons, okay? I like it, number one, because I think as consumers, we have essentially become comfortable with receiving text messages from 10-digit numbers. It's no longer just about short codes. In fact, most of the Ubers and the Uber Eats and the DoorDash and stuff, all their messaging is done via 10-digit numbers. So I think the consumers have generally become receptive to that type of messaging. Number two, the opt-in process has evolved. When short codes first came out, it was because they were short and easy to remember. That was why they were called short codes, because they were short and easy to remember. And the only way for people to opt in was by pulling out their phone and texting in a keyword to a short code. So the availability of a short number was appealing because it was easy to remember. But if you fast forward to today, not many people are opting in by texting in a keyword. Sure, they're doing it here and there, but the majority of the people are opting in through digital channels, right? They're opting in through a kiosk. They're opting in from a KCM. Maybe they're opting in from scanning a QR code or filling out a web form. So from that perspective, the digital opt-in channel has kind of eliminated the need to have a short number. So that is part of the reason that I think they're becoming so much more prevalent, number one. Number two, when you're on a dedicated number, guess what? You have the availability to use any keyword under the sun because nobody else is using that number. So if you want to use some of these really generic words like win or VIP or pizza or play or anything like that, you can do it. There are no limitations. So I think that is very, very appealing to a business because now not only is it their own number, they get access to any keyword, and what doesn't happen anymore is people inadvertently opting into the wrong campaigns, which is very common on a shared shortcode, right? People opt into the wrong campaign by mistake because they've mistyped a keyword or their autocorrect corrected them, or maybe they typed in a response that happened to go down a different path and trigger another keyword. So all that goes away when it's one code per business, one code per business. So that is what the carriers are trying to achieve. And the reason they are, this goes back to this last note here, I get a lot of spam from 10-digit numbers. The reason the carriers are implementing this new vetting process is to eliminate the spam. Okay, they're doing that to eliminate the spam. Lastly here, how will licensed messaging volumes be calculated when using mix of short code, toll-free, et cetera, as messaging rate based total number of all types? No, messaging rate is currently segregated depending on the type of code that you are using. And if you refer to our pricing schedule, which we can send to you, you'll notice that there is pricing for short codes per message, and then in surcharges. And then there's pricing for 10 DLCs per message and surcharges. And then there's pricing for toll-free numbers, messaging, and surcharges. And I think it's important to note that right now on a toll-free number, the only surcharge is Verizon at $0.25. So anybody that's currently sending on short codes, you have to deal with all these surcharges, which for some of you that are doing high volume, this is hundreds or even thousands of dollars every month. When you're on a toll-free number, the surcharge is much less. It's only Verizon at $0.25. Now, of course, the volume discounts are not there, but that's one thing that we are working on with our upstream partners. We are going to them and we're saying, hey, we're doing 15 million messages a month on short codes. We need to be able to transition this traffic to toll-free numbers and not have any different costs associated with that transition. The rates need to be consistent. So we are working with our upstream partners to establish that consistency. Obviously, it's a back and forth negotiation, but it is something we are working towards. So as of now, the messaging cost is different depending on what type of code you are using. And so you can look at your message totals report, you can look at your carrier totals report, and you can get an idea of what your messaging costs would be and what your surcharge would be looking off of those totals, and see if it makes sense for you to make that switch where you could potentially save money by making that switch. And the goal here is not to result in any rate increases. So the goal for us is to keep your messaging cost exactly the same, regardless of what messaging code you're using. And that's the reason we have started these discussions with our upstream partners now, 6 months in advance of this potential date by T-Mobile, so that we can make sure that all these pieces are in place before that transition really starts to get underway. So these are things that we've been actively working on with our upstream partners and making sure that we have the most competitive rates and the most consistent rates across the different messaging codes. So with that said, that kind of wraps up my presentation. I'm certainly able to answer any additional questions that come in here through the chat. Of course, you are all able to reach out to us directly if you have additional questions you want to ask. I really appreciate everybody's time today. I know that this is a little concerning because this is a major, major shift that's happening in the industry, and I don't want to underscore that. I mean, I do want to underscore that. I don't want to make it seem like it's not as big of a change. It is a very big transition that's happening. We are your partners in this transition. We're going to help navigate it for you. We're going to help you transition so that it's seamless for your clients, and there's no hurdles. I think we've already overcome a lot of the potential issues with 10-digit numbers over the last 6 months. And so I think we've worked out those kinks. Now, when you get a toll-free number, you don't want to link it to multiple accounts. It is one account per one number. One account per one number. If you want to register 10 different numbers or 15 or 20 different numbers just to have in a pool of available numbers, I think that's a great suggestion as well. Register a few numbers, not just one, so that you can apply to multiple clients. Okay, so you should not ever use a 10-digit number for multiple brands, and that's the main takeaway. Okay, one brand per number. All right. Thank you all for your time. I very much appreciate it. We'll put this in the reseller portal and we'll send it out via email. Again, look forward to talking to you all soon. And thank you again. Have a good rest of the day.